Ever feel like you're only scratching the surface of your potential? Like there's a whole other gear you just can't seem to hit.
Yeah.
Well, today's deep dive, it's going to get really interesting.
Okay.
We're diving into the world of David Goggins and his book, Can't Hurt Me. So get ready to explore some, well, brutal truths about resilience, self-mastery, and what it really takes to push past your limits.
What's so fascinating about Goggins is he doesn't offer some like magic formula, you
Yeah.
know? He throws you headfirst into the deep end,
Yeah.
starting with his own, well, incredibly raw and often kind of disturbing childhood.
Yeah, you're not kidding. This isn't your typical self-help backstory. Goggins does not shy away from the harsh realities he faced growing up.
Exactly. He paints a really vivid picture of his early life working at his family's roller rink in rural Indiana.
Okay.
And it wasn't all fun and games.
Right.
He was exposed to poverty, violence, and a level of parental abuse that's frankly difficult to even comprehend.
And this is where that concept of an armored mind comes in, right?
Precisely. Goggins posits that these early experiences, while deeply traumatic, they ultimately forged within him kind of an unyielding resilience.
Interesting.
He learned to compartmentalize his pain, to build walls around his emotions as a way to simply survive.
So he's building up this armored mind, but you can't help but wonder about the cost of that kind of resilience. It sounds like a double-edged sword.
It is, and Goggins is very upfront about the fact that his childhood left deep scars. He carries the weight of those experiences with him, but he refuses to let them define him.
That's such a critical point, I think, for our listeners to grasp. We're not talking about glorifying suffering or pretending that trauma is some kind of badge of honor.
Right.
It's about recognizing that even in the darkest of circumstances, there's the potential for growth and transformation.
Absolutely, and Goggins' story is certainly a testament to that, but this armored mind, it wasn't built overnight. You know, there were pivotal moments that shaped his trajectory. And one that really stands out is his experience with this remarkable teacher named Sister Catherine.
Right, his second-grade teacher. This is after he's nearly placed in special education, struggling in school.
Exactly. Goggins' family moves to a small town called Brazil, also in Indiana,
Okay.
and he meets Sister Catherine, this woman who, she saw something in him that no one else did.
What was it about her approach that made such a difference?
Well, she was strict, no doubt, but she was also incredibly dedicated.
Yeah.
She refused to give up on him. She invested extra time helping him catch up on his reading, fostering a love of learning that had been, well, I guess you could say dormant within him.
You know, it makes you think about the incredible impact a single person can have on a child's life. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes all it takes is one person to believe in you to unlock that hidden potential.
It's true. And for Goggins, that belief was transformative. It laid the groundwork for his later belief in his own abilities, even when faced with, seemingly insurmountable challenges.
Speaking of challenges, this is where his path takes a pretty wild turn, right? We go from struggling student to aspiring Navy SEAL, which seems like an impossible leap.
It's a pivotal moment in the book. He's in his early 20s, overweight, stuck in a dead-end job as an exterminator.
Wow.
When he stumbles upon this documentary about Navy SEALs and something about their unwavering mental toughness and physical prowess, it just sparked something within him.
Almost like he saw a reflection of that armored mind he'd been building unconsciously his entire life, almost.
It's an interesting way to look at it, yeah. He becomes fixated on this seemingly unattainable goal of becoming a SEAL, even though he's over 100 pounds over the weight limit and has no military background to speak of.
So how does he bridge that gap?
Yeah.
Talk about setting a goal. He basically gave himself 3 months to drop over 100 pounds just to qualify for enlistment.
And remember, this is David Goggins we're talking about. He doesn't just dabble in a challenge,
Sure.
He dives in head first.
Right.
He completely overhauls his diet, subjects himself to these grueling workouts, all while juggling his exterminator job and studying for the military entrance exam.
It's remarkable. There's a lesson in there for all of us, right?
Yeah.
But the sheer force of will that's unlocked when we really set our minds to something, even if it seems impossible, at first glance.
It's about pushing past those self-imposed limitations, that voice in our heads that tells us we can't.
Right.
Goggins, he calls it the 40% rule. This idea that most of us, we only ever tap into about 40% of our true capabilities.
So there's another 60% we're leaving on the table.
According to Goggins, yeah.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
But how do we even begin to access that untapped potential?
Well, if David Goggins is to be believed, and I think he's earned a listening ear. It starts with embracing discomfort.
Okay.
He doesn't just endure pain. He actively seeks it out as a way to callous his mind, to prove to himself that he can handle anything.
Okay, so this is where his Navy SEAL training, specifically BUS, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL training, takes center stage.
Yeah.
And this is not for the faint of heart.
You're telling me. Goggins vividly describes Hell Week, this infamous 5-day crucible where these aspiring SEALs are subjected to sleep deprivation, extreme physical challenges, and just relentless psychological pressure.
I can't even imagine.
Think frigid water, exhausting drills, and instructors who seem to exist solely to test the very limits of human endurance.
It sounds almost unbearable. But Goggins, he doesn't just survive it. He seems to thrive in that environment.
He even uses the word fun at one point to describe it, which is mind-boggling to me.
And that's where his taking soul strategy comes into play.
Okay.
He realized that, everyone was feeling the pain, the exhaustion, the doubt, so he kind of flipped the script. He used his suffering as a weapon, pushing himself past his breaking point to break his opponents mentally. So it's this idea of weaponizing your own discomfort, turning it into a source of strength, even a competitive edge. I can see how that would be effective in the extreme environment of BUDS, but how does that translate to everyday life?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's something I think about a lot with Goggins' work. It's easy to kind of write him off as this superhuman anomaly, right?
Sure.
But I think there are nuggets of wisdom in his approach that we can all apply, even in a less intense context.
Give me an example. How can I channel my inner David Goggins when I'm facing a deadline at work or feeling unmotivated to hit the gym?
I think it's about shifting your perspective. Goggins forces you to ask yourself, what am I truly capable of? Are you really giving it your all, or are you settling for that 40%?
Okay, yeah, that's resonating. It's that feeling of knowing you could be pushing harder, digging deeper, but something's holding you back.
And often that something is our own minds. We set these limitations based on past experiences, on fear, on what we perceive to be our limits. And Goggins challenges us to break through those self-imposed barriers and redefine what's possible.
But even Goggins faces setbacks. The book talks about how he was rolled back in BUDS, meaning he had to repeat a phase of training not once, but twice.
He did, first because of an injury and then again due to medical conditions.
Oh.
But what's remarkable is how he responded to those setbacks. He didn't see them as failures, but as opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
Opportunities to learn, to adapt, to come back even stronger.
That's a powerful mindset. And it speaks to his belief that we shouldn't shy away from discomfort, but lean into it.
Yeah.
Because that's where real growth happens.
And that's a recurring theme in his journey. Even after completing this grueling SEAL training, he continues seeking out new challenges, pushing himself to the absolute limit.
Which leads us to his foray into the world of ultramarathons. These insane races where people run 50, 100 miles at a time. Talk about embracing discomfort.
Yeah.
Right.
And what's remarkable is that Goggins, he didn't even consider himself a runner. He enters his first 100-miler, the San Diego, one day with minimal training.
Yeah.
Just this unwavering belief that he could push his body and mind further than he thought possible.
I'm sensing a pattern here. It's almost as if he intentionally seeks out these extreme situations as a way to test himself, to prove that those self-imposed limitations, they're nothing more than constructs we build in our minds.
I think you're spot on. And it's not just about proving it to himself, Goggins' journey, it takes on a deeper meaning when he starts using these ultramarathons to raise money for the Special Operations Warrior Foundation, which supports families of fallen SEALs.
It's not just about pushing himself to the edge. There's this deeper layer of purpose driving him now, this desire to make his suffering count for something bigger than himself.
Absolutely. He dedicates his races to honor the memory of his fallen comrades, to support their families.
Yeah.
And in doing so, his pain, it becomes intertwined with this sense of purpose and service.
It's incredibly inspiring, and it speaks to something Goggins talks about in the book, this idea of the cookie jar.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. It's this fascinating concept. Imagine a jar where you store all your past victories,
Right.
Both big and small.
Okay.
Every time you face a challenge, every time that doubt creeps in, you reach into that jar and you remind yourself of what you've overcome. of the times you've pushed past those mental
So
barriers.
it's like a mental repository
Yeah,
of evidence that you
exactly.
can draw onto to fuel your belief in yourself.
Right.
Instead of focusing on what you haven't done, you're reminding yourself of what you have accomplished.
Exactly. And those cookie jar moments, they don't have to be these, monumental
Right.
achievements. They can be as simple as, sticking to your workout routine on a day you'd rather stay in bed. Or finally tackling that task you've been putting off,
Oh, absolutely.
procrastinating on.
Yeah, yeah. That's such a powerful tool. It reminds me of the importance of celebrating those small victories, of acknowledging our own resilience in the face of, everyday challenges.
Yeah, it's about shifting your internal dialogue from self-doubt to self-belief. And Goggins, he takes this concept even further with his approach to failure.
Right. He has that whole section about his attempt to break the world record for pull-ups,
Yeah.
which, if I remember correctly,
It did not go as planned.
did not go as
Yeah.
planned.
No,
Anyway,
and his initial reaction was to blame the equipment, to make excuses for why he hadn't achieved his goal.
of course, yeah.
But then he did something really interesting. He kind of took a step back and he analyzed the situation.
Instead of getting defensive, he got introspective.
Yeah. Exactly. And through that process, he realized that, while the equipment, it might have played a minor role, ultimately he hadn't prepared adequately. He hadn't prepared well enough.
Right.
So he owned his failure. And in doing so, he transformed it into a valuable lesson.
That's a powerful takeaway for all of us. It's so easy to get caught up in blaming external circumstances when things don't go our way.
Mm-hmm.
Goggins challenges us to look inward, to take responsibility for our actions, and to use those experiences as fuel for growth.
It's about adopting what psychologists call a growth mindset.
Right.
This belief that we're not defined by our failures, but rather by how we respond to them.
And it's not just about individual growth. Goggins also talks about the importance of humility,
Yeah,
especially in the context of leadership.
absolutely.
There's a point in the book where he reflects on his time as head of PT for his SEAL platoon.
Yeah.
And he admits that he went too far. He pushed his teammates relentlessly, almost to the point of breaking them.
He did.
He let that uncommon amongst uncommon mentality kind of get the best of him.
Yeah, in a way, he allowed his ego to overshadow his leadership.
Yeah.
And he recognizes that he failed to support his team in the way they needed.
It's a good reminder that even someone as driven, as seemingly invincible as David Goggins is still human.
Yeah.
He makes mistakes, he has blind spots,
Yeah.
and it's those moments of vulnerability that make his story all the more relatable, I think.
Absolutely. And what's so inspiring is that he doesn't shy away from those imperfections.
Right.
He owns them. He learns from them, and he uses them to evolve as a leader and as a human being.
It's a powerful message for all of us, I think. It's
Yeah.
not about striving for some unattainable standard of perfection. It's about embracing the journey, setbacks and all. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of David Goggins, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from his story?
That we are all capable of far more than we give ourselves credit for.
Mhm.
Goggins' story, it's a challenge to question our limits, to push past our comfort zones, and to tap into that untapped reservoir of resilience that I truly believe resides within us all.
It's a call to action, not to become the next David Goggins,
Right.
but to discover our own version of uncommon,
I love that.
to ask ourselves, what's in my cookie jar? And to remember that the journey of self-discovery, while often challenging, is ultimately the most rewarding adventure of all.